Good afternoon. I am here to do the week 3 walkthrough with you. Week 3 already. You guys are doing great. Let me go ahead and share my screen so that we can walk through week 3 together. There we go. So we'll close week 1 and close week 2. I will move week 3 to the home page when I'm done recording this and it is published. And so week 3, we will start with the overview. Now this week I did a little bit different formatting in the hopes that it wouldn't be so overwhelming. So let me walk you through this formatting. And then if you all want to leave feedback in the chat or email me to let me know if you like this, I would appreciate it. So the first tab is course objectives. These are the objectives that relate to the course itself. So I'm continuing to look at physical, cognitive, sociocultural, personality, sexual, ethnic behavior, behavioral personality, sociocultural theories. So we've introduced those. We're going to keep looking at those. Looking at various types of family structures, how families' culture, socioeconomic status, structure, functioning, influence potential for optimum growth and development and health status. So you notice that some of the assignments that you're doing are building on this. That's what we did last week with the Healthy People 2030 objectives and looking at social determinants of health. And then we're also going to look at demonstrating effective communication techniques and therapeutic communication techniques across the lifespan. Mostly going to focus on therapeutic communication techniques, and as we get into the different developmental stages, we'll talk about communication in those instances as well. So if you go to the next tab, which is therapeutic communication, this is the lesson for therapeutic communication, or this is what will take you to the lesson. These are the reading and the lesson and the activity that has to do with this. So we are going to define types of communication, verbal and nonverbal, because nonverbal is also a form of communication, distinguishing between social and therapeutic communication, identifying at least 3 blocks to communication, and comparing and contrasting techniques to enhance communication. It's very important as healthcare professionals to be able to communicate with our clients and with our peers in order to reach the best outcomes for ourselves and for our clients. So you will see that your reading has to do here communication. And this should take you, which it does, to a page about communication. It talks about the communication process where you have a message. For example, right now, I'm giving you a message and you're receiving the message, and how you take that message and feedback that you give me that then will inform how that conversation continues. We're not really having a conversation because you're not able really to give me feedback right now, but that is how that communication loop works. And then 8 modes of nonverbal communication, appearance, body movement and posture, facial expressions, different gestures that we can make, eye contact or not eye contact, tone and volume of voice, or if I change my tone, you know, and sometimes touch can be nonverbal communication. And there's a cute little picture. Silence is also a type of communication, nonverbal, because it's silent. And silence is really difficult for people. Silence works really well in times, I think, of grief and when you just need to be with someone, but it can be very uncomfortable if you don't have a lot of practice with it. I myself have to sometimes tell myself, don't say anything, let it be, just wait until it's the right time or until the other person says something. The other thing that communication relates to is the type of personality. In the nursing program, we talk about different learning styles, which we talk a little about in here. If you're auditory learner or tactile, you have to touch things. But there's also like an excite personality there, which is what I am. Surprise, surprise. And then there are explorers, right? They want to learn about everything, and it's hard for them to focus. And then there are people who are what you would call execute. Everything's a checklist. Students tend to be that because you want to get the grade and you want to check off the assignment. And then examine is the other one, where you really want to look at the details. All the details are very important. But there are also types of personalities where you are very passive, or you let things happen to you. So sometimes it's difficult to talk to those people because it's difficult to communicate because they don't really tell you what they want, and they apologize a lot. There is also the aggressive type of personality. So it can be very destructive, often demanding and manipulative. And it's difficult to have a two-way communication. Assertive people are people who are empowered. You can express confidence and be comfortable in sharing feelings. And also those people tend to encourage other people to talk, like we'll pause so that you can say something, and then we get your feedback, and then we go on from there. When we talk about social versus therapeutic communication styles, interpersonal, intrapersonal, that can kind of happen together sometimes, or sometimes they're separated. Social communication is what we do on our chat, what we do on the Google chat, what we do when we talk to our friends, maybe our partners, just, what's going on, sharing thoughts, ideas, needs, desires, like what's going to happen in our future. What do you think of this TV show? What do you think of that podcast? How about that teacher? Those types of things. It's very, not very superficial. It can be superficial. Whereas therapeutic communication is what we use. This particular article talks about nursing care, but in healthcare, and we're going to talk about that in the next section. Therapeutic communication, I like to think of generally it has a goal. Like I'm having a therapeutic conversation because either I want to get something out of the conversation, or I want you to get something out of the conversation. In terms of goal, there's a purpose and goal oriented. It doesn't necessarily have to start out that way, but that's generally how it ends up. So when you are the healthcare provider and you are talking to your client, say we're in the Clínica de Salud, and we want our client to, their blood sugar's high. I often use diabetes as an example because I have type 2 diabetes. And we want them to cut down on soda pop and drink more water. Or we want them to have healthier carbs, less carbs, or more vegetables, or something like that. And so we're going to get into this conversation where our goal is to have them agree to change their behavior somewhat to a more healthier style. Many of you talked about this in your social determinants little write-up that you did in terms of ways that you could help in your own community, things that you wanted to see. And in order for those things to happen, sometimes you have to have therapeutic communications. So components of therapeutic communication: listening and observing. Noticing would be another word for this. And so there is, as in verbal and nonverbal, there's the cognitive domain where I'm talking to the person, but then there's also what we call the affective domain, which is the feelings, the emotions that come along with what I'm saying. And so listening can be active or passive. So hopefully when I'm having a therapeutic communication, I'm trying to be at the level and I'm making, really good eye contact and listening, nodding every so often. And in my mind, I'm trying to figure out what it is the person's saying so that I can kind of say back to them, is this what I'm hearing you say? And so there's verbal and nonverbal in that. So warmth is a feeling of acceptance, makes the person feel relaxed and secure. So often warmth is helpful in a therapeutic communication. Genuineness, being yourself, open and truthful. Sometimes I don't have the answer. Sometimes I don't know what to do. Sometimes that's just the way it is. So oftentimes I will tell the person, I don't have the answer. I can tell you my experience, which is not your experience, if you'd like to hear that. I have no idea. I've never been in this situation. but I'm here to help you. I'm here to be with you. I'm here to listen. And that's genuineness. And then that person hopefully will trust you and feel like you can have a genuine conversation. Attentiveness, right? Concentrating on what the other person's trying to say. Empathy. Empathy shows that you understand their feelings and the world, view the world as the other person does. It's not the same as sympathy, right? You lose your objectivity when you're sympathetic. So if you're sympathetic, I always think of sympathy kind of as, gosh, I'm so sorry. I feel bad for you. Not a negative thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that sympathy to me is my feelings. Empathy to me is your feelings. So when I feel empathy for someone, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes and feel what it's like for them to go through what they're going through. Whereas if I have sympathy, it's kind of more about me. Oh, I'm sympathetic. You must feel horrible. That kind of thing. And then positive regard, always demonstrating acceptance of the person exactly the way they are. This requires being non-judgmental. We're going to talk a little bit about this with, when we talk in culture, we talk about implicit bias and being non-judgmental. So I need to value everyone. I may not understand them. I may not agree with them. I may not be familiar with their culture, the way that they do things, but I still need to hold them in positive regard. And then components of active listening. So like I was saying, you're going to kind of be at their level, look at them, open posture, not all, arms in front, which I'll even tell people sometimes, I'm just crossing my arms because that's just what I feel right now. I'm not using it as nonverbal body language. I say that now, so people don't think I'm shutting off. Concentrating and understanding and developing trust, providing information, those are all components of active listening. And then when you look at the phases of therapeutic communication, they say that there are 3 phases. So the orientation phase would be, again, this is saying the nurse, but just put in healthcare provider, healthcare professional. It's tough to start in a therapeutic communication, right? There's kind of some anxiety. I'm not sure I really want to talk about this, or I'm not sure how you're going to want to talk to me about this. And so introducing yourself, an opening statement, kind of setting the tone. I tell my students a lot of times I will set the expectations from the beginning of the conversation. This is my hope for this conversation. I understand this is a difficult time, but I'm hoping to be able to give you at least 3 things that you can do to help move forward, something like that. And then because you're trying to build trust, but trust is not built quickly sometimes. Sometimes you just hit it off and it's great. And other times it takes time. The working phase is I'm trying to figure out coping mechanisms. I'm trying to figure out where the other person's at, how they're feeling, how they see things, how they're, where is their functioning. I'm trying to keep confidentiality in mind, that the information won't be shared. And if that goes well, then we can move toward that change in behavior or solution, hopefully. And then the termination phase would be the end of the conversation, and evaluating, excuse me, what has occurred, and then saying, okay, I'm glad that we've worked through these things, and I'm going to be leaving, but I'll come back in an hour, or here's how you contact me. And then I often think to myself, okay, did it seem like they felt like they were helped? Do they have resources that they can use? Sometimes therapeutic communication may be one conversation, or it may be multiple conversations over time, because it may take time to reach the goals that are set by both of us. And then listening rules. Listening rules are hard sometimes, right? Don't talk while listening. Sometimes we want to jump right in. So I tell myself, be quiet, don't update. Again, open, relaxed posture. I'm focusing, I'm looking, quiet environment. Validating, don't criticize, being non-judgmental. Open-ended questions are really important, as is rephrasing for understanding, to make sure that I'm understanding what they're telling me. And so then factors that can affect communication. So congruence. So that is agreement between verbal and nonverbal language, right? Do those match? And then the time and setting. So is this a good time? Is the person ready to hear what I may have to tell them? Am I ready to hear what they have to say? Are we in an office? Are we in a hospital room? Are we in a clinic? Different places, because it can be distracting depending on where you are. A lot of healthcare professionals will go into a person's home. And so that can be considered an invasive. I'm coming onto your property, and that can be difficult sometimes. So proxemics, so like being in proximity to somebody. So how close a person can get. You have your bubble that you have, right? Like people can get pretty close to me, but other people have really big bubbles. And so you kind of have to figure out what that other person's bubble is to give them their personal space. Again, biases, being non-judgmental, know your biases before you go into a situation. How do you feel about another person's culture or where they are in their life, things like that. And then physical disabilities, to take those into consideration in terms of sight, being able to hear, or illness, right? We're having a lot of these conversations in the hospital. And so this is probably not the best time in the person's life. It's probably not a great time. And so if they just had surgery or a colostomy, or they're going to be there for a long time, or they've just lost a loved one. And so we kind of have to take that into consideration. And then if they have hearing difficulties, do they have their hearing aids? Are their hearing aids in? Are they set correctly? Can they hear? So it's good to assess for that. And then another thing is vision, sight. Is the person sighted? Do they have low vision? Are they blind? My son actually is visually impaired. He has something called Stargardt's disease. You can look that up. It's a macular degeneration, type of macular degeneration. And he only has peripheral vision. So if he looks at you, straight on, like we just have been saying, he's not able to see you. He has to actually turn his head or turn his head and look with his peripheral vision, although he's gotten very good at faking it and will look at you straight. But he's kind of doing a little bit of a turn every so often. But he used to get in trouble when he was in middle school, when we first found out about this impairment, because he would not look the teachers directly in the face when talking to them because he couldn't see them. So we need to understand what the vision is and take that into account as well. Multicultural communication, have the person define their health practices and beliefs, respect their culture, listen to the language and words, and provide a translator. So translators are really important. The hospitals are pretty good. They have registered translators, they have language line, and there's also a lot of technology that's coming out now that can translate things on your phone, and that's very important. Avoid stereotyping. Everybody's unique. We want to help people make informed choices. So many times someone will ask during a therapeutic communication, what would you do if, asking me, the healthcare professional, what would you do if you were in my situation? And a lot of times I'll just say, well, I haven't been in your situation. So the best I can do is tell you, here are some of the pros, here are some of the cons, and we can discuss those. If I have been through that situation, I can say, well, I have been through that situation. I'm here to help you through your situation. So if you'd like me to share a little bit, I can, but the decision is ultimately yours. Feedback, ask for feedback. Handouts in the primary language are good, and nonverbal communication understood by everybody. It's kind of a universal language. And then moving on to blocks to communication, things that hinder communication. So belittling makes the person feel little, is the way that I like to think about that. So dismissing people, say, oh, you're acting like a baby. That's ridiculous. You shouldn't even think that way. Kind of being dismissive, right? Oh, why do you even think that? Disagreeing, right? When you disagree, then I get angry because you're disagreeing with me and I need you to hear me. And so that's not, if I'm saying, well, this is how I'm feeling, nah, you'll feel better. You look fine, right? No, don't disagree with them. Agree, but then don't agree. So like, how are you supposed to do that, right? So agreeing, right, says that you believe the person, but it cuts off the conversation. So then it seems unimportant. So they might say, well, yeah, of course you're right. I'd get rid of him. Or, I'm sure you're correct. I'm afraid, like in this example, I'm afraid the doctor won't send me home. The nurse says, I'm sure you're correct. I doubt he'll let you go home so soon. So there's a happy medium in there. So a lot of times you can say, oh, what makes you think that the doctor won't be letting you go home today or tomorrow? And you can go into that piece. Or, oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way. What makes you feel like you're not getting better? Those kind of questions are a better avenue. Defending, trying to justify something, giving an excuse, I guess that would be, because it does happen a lot in healthcare. So for example, they give an example here that the patient says, I had my call light on for 15 minutes, and the healthcare professional says, I'm doing the best I can. You're not the only patient here. So that's not the best. That's very defensive, and so what are some things you could say? Oh, well, gosh, you're right. I did notice that it was on. I'm so sorry. I will try and do better next time. I will try and delegate. I'm so sorry that you had to wait. Something like that. Stereotyping or generalizing, again, not a very good thing. All 2-year-olds are terrible. Then I always say, yeah, but have you had a 3-year-old? Because they're worse than 2-year-olds. Instead of saying, oh gosh, I'm so sorry that you're worried about your children. Is there anything I can do? Is there anybody you'd like me to call? Giving false reassurance. I think that's something that we just automatically do because we don't want things to be wrong, right? So if you just automatically give reassurance, but it may not be valid or appropriate. So the thing that we usually will say is, oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. Oh, you're going to be fine. Everything will be all right. But we don't know that for sure, unless we really do know that, like we got results back and we know that. So you don't want to give false reassurance. No, you're not going to die. The other thing is giving advice. So again, sometimes I have to be careful with that, because if there's a situation that I've been in that's the same as the client, I don't want to give them advice. It's their decision. And so, we try to give pros and cons, or they'll say, well, what pediatrician would you take your children to? Well, I can't really say, well, I would take them to Dr. Smith. There's many good pediatricians. I'm happy to get you a list of pediatricians. Are you looking for a specific affiliation, maybe a pediatrician affiliated with Stanford or a private, not in a group pediatrician? Could ask things like that, and then give them a list. Changing the subject just throws everything off. It means that you're very uncomfortable, and they'll say something and you just ask a totally different topic. You don't even acknowledge what they say. And then closed-ended questions. I think most people are familiar with closed-ended questions. This example says, are you in pain? Yes. No. Okay, well, where do you go from there? How do you learn more about their pain? Could you tell me what your pain feels like? Where are you experiencing your pain? Could you tell me on a scale of 0 to 10 what your pain is? Why questions? These are confusing because we'll say, well, why? If you're saying why, just why, that's not a good thing, because sometimes the person will just make something up just to get you off their back. And they kind of feel attacked. What do you mean why? That's just how I feel. And so it's interesting you feel that way. Could you tell me a little bit about why you feel that way? That's a better way to ask a why question instead of just saying why. Probing. So going beyond what's necessary. That's invasive and threatening. Nobody likes that. So don't do that. Again, there might be other ways to ask those questions. Interesting that there's it looks like more barriers to communication. So enhancing communication, right? Giving information. What's the purpose of the reason that we're talking? Validating, verifying my perception of the verbal or nonverbal message, if the needs have been met or not. Clarifying, right? Could you please explain that, or to clear up misunderstandings if I'm not quite sure what you're saying or why you're saying it, or to keep them on topic. So don't pretend that you understand if you don't. I'm not trying to understand. Could you repeat that? Or I think if I'm understanding correctly, this is what I think you're saying, or this is what I'm hearing you say. Can you let me know if I'm correct or not? Something like that. Reflecting. So that's my perception of another person's message in their feeling domain in that. And so it's letting the other person know that I am paying attention, not just to what they're saying, but how they're feeling and the mood that's going on. And then it sounds as if you, but I'm sort of collating the information that I'm hearing and seeing and putting it all together. And it sounds as though you're feeling angry. It looks to me like you might be feeling sad or upset by this. Usually it's a tone of voice thing, but not always. Paraphrasing or restating, using similar words to what the other person just said. So determine whether you understand what the other person means. So if the person says, I couldn't eat supper last night, the nurse responding, oh, you had difficulty eating then, right? Because if they're just saying I couldn't eat, that could be many things. It could be a time frame. It could be they didn't like the food. It could be they were having difficulty eating. So if you say, oh, did you have difficulty eating, or you had difficulty eating, they can say, oh, no, I just didn't like the food, right? So that's a way of restating. Open-ended questions, broad questions allow the person to go more into detail. So that's a good thing. Tell me more. Tell me more about that. That's a good one. General leads, things that like somewhat agreeing, go ahead. And then, oh, okay. Very similar to clarification. Offering of self. So listening in silence, being present in the moment, paying close attention to the other person. So useful when the client won't talk or it's highly emotional and words can't really convey the message. And so sometimes just sitting there, I'll sit with you for a while, I'll stay a while if you'd like. Something like that is often very helpful. And that's an offering of self. That's a way of caring. And then focusing, directing the conversation to a specific topic when you're seeking information on something that you're not quite clear about or they're not explaining very well so that you can understand it. So focusing, excuse me, and it's kind of a combination of maybe restating, paraphrasing, and then open-ended. Tell me more so that I can understand. Using humor, one of my favorites, but it's humor that doesn't demean the person or cut them down. But laughter can improve mood, helps endorphins, which is good. And this is the reference where this chapter was taken from. I love it because it just boom, 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 has all the things that you need to know about therapeutic communication. And then it ends with communication in the workplace. So trying to stay positive, because sometimes it's really hard. Conversations should be based on facts. Don't be spreading rumors, pointing blame, going up the chain of command, things like that are very important. So that is that reading and that part of the lesson for you that I have just gone over. And so if we go back to our therapeutic communication, there's also a communication, don't know if this is going to open up. It's a PowerPoint. There we go. So the PowerPoint goes over pretty much what the reading went over. You can look at that. And this week's lesson is basically kind of what we just went over in the reading. So the types of communication, social and therapeutic blocks, enhancing communication, all of that is in that, what we just read, what I just went over with you. And so that's the reading, that's the PowerPoint, which is based on that. And then this is a lesson from a couple years ago, many years ago from the PowerPoint. And then this is kind of a cool nonverbal communication video that I like to show students. The quality isn't that great, but it's from Friends, the TV series Friends, and just the way different examples of nonverbal communication. And then I added in some extra things if you'd like to read about guidelines for parent-child communication. So this has to do with communication across the lifespan and also about communication in marriage. Could be relationships or marriage. Both of those things can be difficult. And then the activity assignment, let's go over that. This one you have 2 weeks to do. And so what I'm wanting you to do is practice therapeutic communication. And so what we're going to do is you've been divided into groups, and the groups, I'll post the groups in an announcement so that all the groups and all the scenarios are there. But if you go to your people tab, it will take you to it won't do it for me because I'm not in a group. It will take you to who's in your group, and there should be 3 people, I believe, in each group. I have to go back and make sure the groups are correct. And so based on those groups, probably 3 people in each group, you're going to have to connect with each other either through Google Chats, or if you go to the people tab, and it actually has a separate page for your group. So you can communicate within your little group and do Google Docs and all that kind of thing. And what will happen is there'll be actually 2 scenarios, and there will be 3 of you. So one would be the healthcare professional, one would be the client or a family member, and the third is the observer. The observer is going to provide feedback to the first and second people. And then you're going to take that same scenario, and everybody's going to be the healthcare professional, everybody's going to be the client or family member, and everybody's going to be an observer. And so you conduct the role play, looking at have those lists in front of you, looking at therapeutic communication, blocks to communication, how to enhance communication, active listening, empathy, and then you do the role play with the first group, give feedback, and then you switch roles, give feedback, switch roles one more time, and give feedback. So you're going to rotate to allow everybody to get through that one situation and all those roles. And then once you've done the assigned scenario, which I thought I had, yep, okay. Once you've done the assigned scenario, then you can choose any of the scenarios that are there, and then repeat the exercise. And so each person will turn in their own reflection. So each individual student uploads your own reflection. And so you need to say which scenario you were given, what techniques did you use, were they effective? And then you're going to choose another scenario. What other scenario did you choose? Why did you choose it? Was it easier or more difficult the second time around after having done it, practiced it once? And did you use the same or different therapeutic techniques? We also talk about communication in terms of cognitive rehearsal. Cognitive rehearsal is when you practice doing or saying something over and over and over again, so that when it actually happens in real life, you feel more prepared to deal with the situation because you've practiced it. That's kind of what this is. And then overall, do you think therapeutic communication and techniques are useful? Do you see a use outside of healthcare? If so, in what way? And then what effects could therapeutic or non-therapeutic communication have on growth and development at any stage? So see, we're taking these things and we're relating them back to growth and development, so that as we go through each stage in a couple of weeks, we'll have all of this foundational fundamental work done, and it'll be easier to apply it as we go through each stage. So there's a couple extra resources here. Here's a review of therapeutic communication techniques. This is a little nursing student over the top non-therapeutic communication example. I thought it's way over the top, but I thought it was kind of funny. And then these are the scenarios. And again, I will post these in an announcement. So for example, if you are in group 2, the scenario is a client, because you're a healthcare professional, expresses mixed feelings about making lifestyle changes to improve their health. So your group, you 3 people, decide what that scenario is going to look like. So what lifestyle changes are you trying to make to improve health? That's up to you to decide. And then the healthcare professional is going to talk to the client and have a conversation and hopefully be therapeutic about it. And you can play around with it, use therapeutic things, do blocks to communication. And then when you're done there, then switch roles, give feedback and switch roles. Once you're done doing that, group 2, you can choose any of the other situations. Some of them are the same. You might want to do one maybe like the scenario for group 6 where the client's spouse expresses fear about an upcoming medical procedure the client's having. So that's a family member. So that might be something you'd want to try. Again, I'll put this in an announcement. If you have questions, go to the chat. If you're having trouble getting your group together, let me know. It's really important that the group participates. It's not a group grade, it's an individual grade, but the group needs to work together. Now, how you decide to do that, if you guys live in the same geographic area, you can meet someplace, you can do it over Zoom, Google Meets, however you want to do it, but it's another way to interact and meet with each other in the class. And then again, this would be worth 10 points. And so 1 point for the formatting, 1 point for actively participating, and then answering all the questions that were posed. That's worth the 8 points. So there's your 10 points there. Right. And so that's the role-playing scenario. So you don't have to videotape it or anything. All you're turning in is this reflection. And you're going to answer all those questions there. Okay. All righty. Let's go back to module 3. Let's go back to the overview where we were. So we've looked at the course objectives. We've looked at therapeutic communication. Now we're going to look at family and cultural influences on growth and development. So what I tried to do, they're very similar, but I tried to break them into 2 separate lessons so that you could kind of separate them for easier, hopefully, comprehension and understanding. So family influences, defining types of family structures, family systems theory, developmental stages of a family. Who knew there were stages that a family goes through as well? Functional and dysfunctional families. And then there's actually probably 5 or 6, but we're going to concentrate on 4 child rearing styles. Excuse me. And so this is your reading. This is one of the books that is in the modules that has your resources, and I'll go there in a second. And you want to read chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So if you go to child, family, and community, oops, it's not going to open it up in a separate window. Sorry. Oh, it's the book. It downloaded the book. I think I have it in a web page as well. I'll look, but this will bring up the book. Oh, nope, this is the one that comes in the book. I'm so sorry. This one is not online, I don't believe. And so you just go ahead and go through and chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So a good amount of pages. So make sure that you spend some time, kind of skim and then go through it again. Usually going through the reading more than once is helpful, not reading, but like skimming, look at the titles, kind of skim through the main points. And then if there's things that you don't know or don't understand, go back and concentrate on those sections. And then there is, again, another PowerPoint that talks about family influences. This one's from 2020. I think it will load. Hopefully it loads. And it again will cover all those specific objectives that we just talked about in the overview. And then here is the lesson. Now the lesson for culture and family is the same lesson. I'm just letting you know that. And then I just broke it out into 2 different lesson pages. So again, same reading, there's the activity, and then here's cultural influences. And if you go to cultural influences, that will come first. And so we're just focusing on family right now. And the activity that you have is we're going to talk about family systems theory. So you're going to do that reading. there's a PDF that you can look at. There's a resource on what makes a family functional or dysfunctional. And so what you are asked to do is to use family systems theory to analyze your understanding of family roles and boundaries, and what is a definition of a functional or dysfunctional family. So I think we can all think of whether our family is functional or dysfunctional. Personally, I think all families are functional and dysfunctional depending on where they are. But you're going to review your resources, and then this is not a group project. This is individual. This is all you. And so you're going to select a family from movies, TV, current events, something like that. And you're going to, so you have to choose two families, one that you feel is functional and one that you feel is dysfunctional. And then you're going to use concepts from family systems theory. So family systems theory basically says that if something happens to one person in the family, it affects everybody else in some way, shape, or form. It's not just individual. So for example, our dog passed away last Monday, and that affected myself and my son because it's my son's canine buddy, and I was taking care of the dog. I did 3 weeks of palliative care for our 13-and-a-half-year-old dog. Great life. But that also, I'm experiencing stress. My son is experiencing stress. So that affects his girlfriend and her mom, because her mom's the vet, affects my husband, affects my other son who lives in the house, and it affects the other 2 dogs. Right. So if my husband loses his job, or I lose my job, or, it affects the whole family. That's family systems theory. And so because it affects everyone, we have to figure out how we're going to move as a unit and get through that situation. And so there are different concepts from family systems theory, like different roles. What is your role? Or, are you like the head of the household? Are you like the one that does everything? Are you the one that fixes everything? Different little subsystems within the family. What are the boundaries? Do you have boundaries? Are there no boundaries? Do you ever get to a state of homeostasis where things are kind of just going along? And then what you want to do then is write an essay discussing your analysis and how the family systems theory helps to understand that difference between functional and dysfunctional families. So then how do you think the functionality of a family might affect the growth and development of its members? So review your resources about family systems theory, select 2 families, one functional and one dysfunctional that you feel. Then using concepts from the family systems theory, you're going to describe each of those family dynamics and their situations. It's best to give an example from the show or life if you can. And so how then does that make you think that the family's functional or dysfunctional? I should probably add in there to use an example. So these are some different ideas for families. And so some of these, most of those are, those are pretty functional families, and then kind of down here, kind of not so functional families. If you get stuck on finding a family, you are welcome to use one of the case studies. I have one for a functional and one for a dysfunctional family. You're still going to have to relate that to family systems theory. So I think with a TV show or a movie, you have a whole arc of the story that might be easier to talk about. And then when you look at the rubric, so choosing your families, choosing 2 families, one functional, one dysfunctional is 2 points. And then the excuse me, the formatting. You should have a reference page. You can use either MLA or APA format. That's 2 points. And then the majority of the points, the 6 points, are using concepts, providing an analysis of each family, how you think the family systems theory helps to understand why they're functional or dysfunctional, and then how you think that's going to affect the growth and development of the family members. It doesn't mean that the family necessarily has to have kids. It can be an extended family. There can be grandparents or aunts and uncles, or maybe neighbors are seen as members of the family, something like that. But that's kind of bringing that into like bringing it into the real world. I don't necessarily like students to talk about their own family because I feel like that's really difficult and very invasive on my part. So that's why we're choosing worldly worldly families. And it's kind of meant to be fun because sometimes you go through it and you go, oh, I thought they were functional, but they're really dysfunctional. Or, oh, I thought they were dysfunctional, but oh, they really are functional. Okay. So there's that. So we'll go back to our modules. And we talked about communication, that's culture and family influences. We talked about the therapeutic communication assignment, the family systems. Okay, so now let's go back and talk about culture. So cultural influences on growth and development. You have different reading for this, but the lesson will take you to the same lesson page. So there's reading here that talks about which should actually take you, this one should take you to the web page. I'll just keep my fingers crossed that y'all get, yep, there we go. And that should take you to a different page. And then Overstreet, hopefully that goes, yep, here we go. Okay, so that would be your reading. These are also two interesting articles that I've given to students for several years now, talking about cultural competence versus cultural humility, because we throw around a lot of different terms, and apparently they all have different meanings. But I think those are two interesting articles. The main questions and such will come from the reading. And then here's the PowerPoint that talks about cultural influences. So take a look at that because that speaks directly to the objectives, which are discuss impact of culture and personal values on everyday life and healthy behaviors, and outline the effect of community on family and child development. So the community, the culture of the community on family and child development. Again, this will take you then back to, should be that lesson. Yep. And so then you're going to go down to your cultural influences here. And there's the PowerPoint. And this is kind of a cool video. It talks about importance of influence on child development. So just kind of see what you think there. I need to put in the reflection questions for that one. Your week 3 ones. And then for the assignment, we're going to go here, and then there's a couple resources for implicit bias and how that can influence growth and development. So you have bias in healthcare. There's an article there that talks about implicit bias affecting perceptions and treatments of clients, and then understanding implicit bias and how it affects children, and why it affects children. And then if we go to the activity assignment, oops, I do not, that means it's not open. So let me get out of this one. One moment, please. There we go. So cultural influences. Oh, that was not what I wanted. I will go back and fix that. That's why I love to do these, because then I catch all my mistakes. So I will go back and change that. The assignment is this week 3 discussion. Reflections on completing a cultural self-awareness questionnaire. I will go back and fix that link. So here is your discussion. This works. So the initial post is due by Wednesday. That way everybody gets their posts in, and then people can start replying on Thursday. So don't reply to your peers till after everybody's posted on Wednesday. That way the first people that do their initial post don't get all of the feedback from classmates. If we wait till everybody's posted, then everybody can read everybody else's and kind of decide who you would like to connect with. So a couple steps to this, because we're looking at cultural self-awareness. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Project Implicit and choose 2 implicit bias tests to complete. So if you click on the link, it will take you to another page. Some of you may have done this already. Project Implicit, it tells you all about it. And then you say, I wish to proceed. And then it will give you different tests that you can take. Excuse me. And so there's Asian American, skin tone, presidents, gender, weight, race, disability, transgender, weapons, religion, age, Jewish, Arab, Muslim, another gender having to do with career. So what you are going to do is you are going to take 2 of these tests. I don't know the results, they're yours to look at. So you're going to choose 2 of those. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to complete the cultural self-awareness questionnaire. So again, these are your results. I don't see them for the implicit bias testing or the cultural self-awareness questionnaire. And so it's these are tools. They're not like exams, right? These are just tools. And so what you want to do is answer the questions in terms of, do I value diversity? Never, always. Make sure you look at the headings, which ones they are. And so you go through and you answer those questions, and then you score yourself. So you add up the number of times that you did each one. The more points you have, the more culturally competent you are becoming according to this particular questionnaire. So do those 2 things, right? Then reflect on your feelings and thoughts after completing the test and the questionnaire, and answer these questions. So for the implicit bias test, which ones did you choose and why? Were your results expected or not? And how did you feel while taking the test? Now, I've taken these, the faculty has done these, and it's really interesting because you kind of go in with what you think you know and how you feel, and then you go in, you're like, okay. And it's really self-exploration. So I would encourage students to be very open when taking them, and when you are writing this and when you are replying to each other, to be very respectful and helpful, and like you would expect to be treated as well. And then for the cultural self-awareness questionnaire, what questions were easy to answer, what questions were difficult, because sometimes they were like really easy, and then other times like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's sometimes, I don't think it's never, it's not always. And so what do you think? And then did your answers surprise you? And then how do you think, this is actually for both, how do you think understanding your implicit biases and having cultural self-awareness will help you in providing patient-centered, culturally competent care as a healthcare professional? If you're not going into the healthcare profession, because I think there are a few of you who are not, how might these tests and assessments help you in everyday life or in the career that you might be pursuing? Then on Thursday, after everybody's posted their initial posts answering those questions, then you want to provide support, take the discussion further. Did you have similarities, differences? Were there any aha moments? Did you share those? That kind of thing. And so you want to write at least 1 to 2 paragraphs for the initial response, which are due on Wednesday. And then you want to try and incorporate 1 example from the weekly lecture or the reading. And then hopefully 5 sentences. I don't think it says in the rubric. Let's go look in the rubric, right? Because if we go up to the 3 dots, hopefully I did a rubric. You can click on show rubric. Oh, yes, I did. So the initial post is there, the first peer response, and the second, let's see, second peer response. Yeah, 5 sentences, more than 5 sentences. So at least 5 sentences, 6 sentences would get you full points. Let's say that. There you go. And your due dates are met. So there's your rubric. So again, do 2 of the implicit bias tests, complete the cultural self-awareness questionnaire, answer the implicit bias questions, answer the self-awareness questions by Wednesday. On Thursday, start replying to peers, and those are due on Sunday. Look at the rubric, and I will fix the link. Okay, so then if we go back to the week 3 module, we did that, we went through that, I'll fix that. And then you've got your therapeutic communication groups, which I will put in an announcement. You've got family systems theory, and you've got your discussion. Then you also will have by Wednesday your week 2 journal questions that will be due. So those would be from the week 2 lessons, and I have to go in and make sure I have journal questions for week 3, which I will go in and do. But let's go back and look at those lessons. Down at the bottom. There we go. Time to reflect. There's your questions for week 2. So I will go and make sure that there are questions for week 3. You guys are doing great. Things are going well. week 2. So week 3, and then you have a quiz. I'm still working on that. I think I have one more question to put in, and then accomplishments. What I wanted you to do, we're in week 2. If you go in and look at accomplishments for week 1, so each week there will be accomplishments of what you have, what you've done, right? Take credit for things that you've done. You've done a lot of learning. Remember, this is a 16-week course in 8 weeks. So you're doing double the work. So if it seems difficult and time consuming, it is. So it tells you what you did and your journals and tells you about the quizzes, right? And then it will take you back to the week. So 92% on the week 1 quizzes. That's great for week 1 quizzes. So if you have questions, feel free to ask in the Google chat. You can email me in the course, whatever works for you. Let me stop sharing. There we go. Let me know. Take advantage of my student hours. I haven't had a lot of students make appointments with me, so feel free to do that on Monday afternoons and Thursday evenings. I have met with some students at different time frames because they asked to do that. They were available at different times, so I'm available to do that as well. So I will go ahead and fix those couple things that I needed to fix, and I will be talking to you later. Have a great rest of your weekend and night. Take care.